Hi baristas, I thought it would be helpful to make a video on how to do 2 pour overs at once. I'm actually going to be showing you a technique I learned when I was working with Intelligentsia. Let's get started. So I learned this technique at Intelligentsia, and I no longer work there. I haven't worked there in a few years, but I've held on to it for a reason. When it's rush time and you have to make pour over after pour over after pour over after pour over, the best thing to do to keep your brain good and to get drinks out fast and take care of your customers in a timely amount of time is to develop a technique in which you can do 2 at once that lowers your risk of messing up the recipe. I was saying ratio and recipe at the same time. This technique works really well. It fires off on all the cylinders of effectiveness, time economy, keeping your brain good, because that's very important, and keeping your coffee good. Got my 2 mugs, got my 2 pour overs, and I have my filters in. What we're gonna do before anything is we're gonna make sure that we pre-wet well. Now we're going to pour in our dose. Pro tip, if you're working at a cafe and you have a pour over slow pour bar, please invest in little tiny canisters that pre-weigh your doses. You probably already do that, but it is a blessing. Let's talk about how this is gonna go before I show you, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bloom one of these coffees, and I'm not even going to think about the second one until I hit my first one that I started with its first round of water and finish it. Meaning, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start my timer, correct? I'm gonna bloom this coffee and I'm gonna wait. I know you wanna touch this coffee, but don't do it yet. I'm gonna bloom this coffee to about 30 seconds, and then I'm gonna hit it with my first round of water or pulse. Whatever your recipe calls for, just complete that first round of water here. And then I'm gonna bloom my second one, right? So what happens is when you stagger the pour overs, you kind of create this rhythm in which you're bouncing back and forth. And you're gonna bloom this, it's gonna take 30 seconds, and usually you wait around 10 to 15 seconds between your pulses of brews, ideally. It's usually what happens. And you bloom this, and then around then you're gonna wait a few seconds and hit this with your second round of water, okay? Once that's done, this probably needs its first round of water. First round of water. Oh, once that's probably done, this needs its third round of water, which might be the last time you touch this one. And then you could go over here and finish up this cup. It works brilliantly. I have worked in really busy cafes in New York City, in downtown Chicago in Millennium Park, and quite a few other busy locations, and I love this way of brewing 2 pour overs at once. It's fabulous, I recommend it. All right, now that I have laid out how I want to do this, I'm gonna do it for you so that you can see visually how I like to do these pour overs. Easy does it. You want to bloom to 2 times the weight of your dose in, but you wanna know what's more important? Making sure that all the coffee grounds are wet. So make sure, if you go over a little bit, it's not the end of the world. I doubt your coffee is going to be ruined because of that. All right, we are approaching 30 seconds. So I'm gonna hit this with my first round of water after the bloom. Here we go. Yay! All right, and now it's time to bloom this boy. Here we go. And now we begin the dance of the pour overs. Gorgeous. This is almost 15 seconds in after my first round of water, and it's already time to do my second. See how beautiful that is? Getting those edges, want to make sure that we don't ignore any grounds of coffee. Keeping our slurry level about midway, maybe a little bit more, maybe 3/4 of the way up. We want to make sure our slurry level is not all the way up at the top, especially for something as tiny as this. And now it is time to give this its first round of water. Perfect. And already I've arrived at the second round of water. Typically my rounds, let me see how to make this make sense. Oh, already arrived, here we go. So I typically follow a timetable of 5 seconds to the 30 or to the minute, meaning I typically pour when it says 55 and 25. Does that make sense? So this says 125, I'm gonna pour. That said 155, so I poured. So it's usually on the 25 and 55. You remember that, you are golden. Once you get a rhythm down, once you really solidify how the dance of the pour over goes with the timetables, with like your pulses waiting 15 seconds about between rounds of water, that'll fluctuate. You will then be a master at recognizing when your grind needs an adjustment, and that's the beauty of dialing in. But I like to make things easy, of course, because you know I like to make things accessible. So if you keep 25 and 55, start there. Maybe you adjust it for your own comfort level. I tend to find that I always pour on the 25 and 55, so that's kind of like my golden rule. And I like to teach baristas that because, you know, when you're beginning coffee brewing or you're beginning a job as a barista and you haven't had experience, it's so intimidating. It's so intimidating to step into what is seen as a craft that involves talent and strength. Listen, we all have the talents and strengths already within us. We just need to learn the numbers and the motions. And this is done. So I'm actually gonna go throw these away. Just wanted to make this video because I think it's really helpful to know how to juggle 2 pour-overs at once, and then once you get really good and comfortable with this, you can bring on the third where you're at least pre-wetting, grinding your coffee while you're doing these. I feel like this motion, this dance, this methodology between 2 pour-overs will give a seasoned and experienced barista a lot of room to do other things. And I do think that if you can handle having 2 pour-overs at once during a rush, you're probably going to be a great asset to a rush. So anyways, thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. Let me know what else you want to learn below.